everybody, welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about extended chords. Let me put that up here so I don't forget what we're talking about. All right. And in my lesson where I was actually showing you how to play them, what you're actually doing is just adding notes to them. So let's lay out a G major scale like that. I like that one. C is nice too because there's no sharps or flats, but for guitar players, G is a very common chord. So let's write out our G major scale. All right, we don't need the octave. We should know by now that that eighth note, that's an octave, okay? So let's write, I want to write some numbers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay? And we know chords are made up of the 1, the 3, and the 5. So let's take a G chord. The 1, the 3, and the 5. You play these G, B, D, you now have a G major chord. Now, you want to add some notes to that? Let's see what we can add. What I want to do is take our numbering, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's go down here. The 8 is the octave. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Okay? Now, this is where you can see where you see 9 chords, 11 chords, 13s. You don't see 10s because that third position, 10th position, same thing, determines if it's major or minor. You don't need, it's always going to be in that chord. That's how you, for the most part. You can substitute it and stuff, and I'll show you that in a minute. But if that's there, it's considered as third. That determines major or minor. All right. Same way with the 12th. You don't see a 12th. The 5th is also one of the common tones in there, so you won't see it repeated. You're not going to add a second D in there. It doesn't make any difference. It's just adding octave of the 5th is all you're doing. Okay. So our G chord, let's add a note to it. And the first note you typically would add, you're going to start to see a pattern. You got the 1, 3, 5. The next logical note would be a 7. It actually goes every other. So you can add an F sharp to this. If you were to play that, G, B, D, and F sharp, you now have what we call a G major 7, because you're using the major quality of that F, the F sharp. It's a G major 7, which looks like G major 7th, okay? That's what this chord here is. Now, a G dominant 7th, which is the blues G7 as we would call it, is a little different. You've got your G, you've got your third, the B, and you've got your D. You're going to add the 7th, but what we do with a dominant 7th, now that blue 7, is a flattened 7th. So if you go from F sharp and flatten it, it comes down to an F, just the F, okay? And that right there is what we call a G7. Then there's some other things we can do here. Let's take that G and let's not play the B. Let's replace it with the A. We're going to replace it with this one, the 9th. And depends on which, if you're using the note behind the B you normally would play, like the open second string, it would be considered a second. I'll show you here. So, and then we got our D in it. So G, A, D, you got the 1, 2, and 5. Okay. So you got the 1, the 2. I want to number these 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Explain it properly to you here. 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5. And then it's your 7th, and this would be a flat 7th. If you put the 2 in there, that A is the 2, and the 5, you would now have a G. You've suspended that third. You put it on suspension, it's in trouble, it's suspended, it's not there. It's like when you're suspended from school. It's not here, you don't have a third. We're replacing it with the 2nd. You can use the 2nd or the 4th. I'll show you the 4th in a minute. But we're going to suspend it. We're replacing it with the 2nd. So now we have this, what you would call a G sus 2. You're suspending the third, replacing it with the second. All right. What that does to that chord is it doesn't have the major, you don't have the third to know if it's major or minor. So when you play a G sus 2 or an A sus 2 or D sus 2, it kind of has an interesting feeling. You don't really know if it's major or minor. It just kind of is there. Gives you kind of an ambiguous feeling. So it's a fun way to make your song more interesting when you play a sus chord. Sus 4, same concept. G sus 4, you're gonna have your 1 G. You're gonna suspend your third. We're not using the B. We'll use the fourth this time. That's C, and then a D, and that's a G sus 4. You suspended the third, and you're replacing it with a fourth. Okay. Add 9, that kind of stuff, like a C add 9 chord. We're going to do a G add 9 just so you can see, because I got it laid out here. But what you're going to do is a G add 9. You're going to start out, you got your 1. You're going to use your third, so we know it's a major chord. You're going to use your 5. So G, B, D, we got a straight up G chord. And then we're going to add the 9th. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the octave. The second is the 9th. So you're going to add a note. And you could also put the 7th in there, the F sharp as well, if you wanted to. Typically, when you see 9ths, 11ths, 13ths, you have those. It's implied the 7th is there. Sometimes you'll play the 7th, you'll drop the G, and the bass will play the G for you, so the note's still there. But this would be a G add 9. It's not a sus 2 because we still have the third there. We didn't suspend it. It's still there, so you're adding to it. It's a G add 9. We added that. Similar with the 11th. The 11th gets a little tricky. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's go with the 13th. So let's see. G 13. Basically, you're going to have your G, B, D, a lot of times you'll have your 7th in there, an F sharp, and 3, 5, 7. Actually, it's going to be a flat end. We're going to flatten it. You got bluesy sound, and then you would add, so you got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You'd add an E note in there. It'd be your 13th. Okay, so that's all they are. When you see a 7, a 9, an 11, a 13, you're adding those notes to that chord to make it a bigger, brighter, jazzier, more unique chord instead of just playing a G. The 11th is a little different. Typically what you'll do, because when you play the third is your B, and you play an 11 chord, they're just a semitone apart, and that can be kind of the sound. It doesn't sound very good together. So a lot of times you'll see like a G 11 sharp, like they'll sharpen that up to a C sharp. They change the key to give it. You got your G, B, D, and then you'll do a C sharp to break it up. Depends on the chord. So that I might do a whole lesson on the 11 chord, because there's different rules to it, and depending on which notes you have in it, you don't want that clashing sound. But that's all extended chords are. You're just adding a note to it. Like I said, major 7 is you're using the actual note from that major scale. The dominant 7, you're just going to flatten it. It's a Mixolydian type sound. Suspended, sus 2, sus 4, you're suspending the third, so it's not major or minor anymore, and you're replacing it with the second or the fourth. Add 9s. You're just adding more and more notes. Technically you could play all of them, and it would be I don't know the name of it, but it would technically be a chord. It's just going to sound really odd with every note in there. So the more notes you add, the more interesting it is, but it also gives us different sounds, and sometimes it can be limited. It depends on what you're writing. A lot of jazz is going to have 11s, 13th, 9s, that kind of stuff. So your straight up rock sometimes doesn't even have, actually we'll put a note in here real quick. Hard rock, rock and roll, power chords. Power chords are technically not a chord. Let me erase this here real quick. I want to show you something real quick here. I've had this conversation. It's called a 5-chord, but with guitarists over the years, it's not technically a chord per se. A chord has to have 3 notes, a tritone. All right. Triad. Sorry, not tritone. Triad. 3 notes. And a power chord typically doesn't. If you were playing the, we'll say the typical open E, and then the 2nd fret on the A, you would have an E note. Actually, let's just go with the G power chord. I've got the G up here. 3rd fret, that low E, it's a G note. And then 5th fret of the A is a D note. You've got a 1 and a 5. That's it. You're playing those 2. And then if you play the 5 of the D, you would have another G note. It's just the octave. That's all you're playing with a power chord, the 3, 5, 5, G, D, G. You're just hitting the root and the 5th. It's not major, it's not minor. That's why, like Nirvana, grunge rock, metal, you can have some interesting chord progressions because those chords aren't major and minor. Your soloing, your bass, those kind of help fill in those minor and major qualities that you're trying to convey. So it gives you a lot more power. You can actually hit that distortion. And it's a root and a 5th. It's going to sound good. When you throw the 3rd in there, you get more stuff going on as far as tones in the background that start making the heavy distortion. When, if you were to play like a E flat 13, it's going to sound weird, fully distorted. You want those clean qualities to bring out the tones. So that's why you typically see with hard distortion rock, 5 chords, majors and minors, bar chords, but that's about, and some 7ths, but you don't typically see 11th, 9th, 11th, 13th with heavy distortion. There's a lot of undertones and it gets really dissonant. It doesn't sound right. Okay, so just a quick note on a power chord. That's a power chord. You can do it with just the 2 notes, or if you had that 3rd, it's just an octave. It's still not a triad because it's not 3 different notes, okay? So, quick little tip on power chords. So, I will see you next time. Thanks.